Adrian Newey potentially has a contract that's linked to Christian Horner as well. We know they're good friends. We know from his book that all of the good times that Red Bull have had, he shared with Christian Horner. So perhaps Newey is looking for a way out. Welcome to another episode of the Tired F1 Pod. We are back, better than ever. Ammar, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It feels like we can't rest in between races. Like we do these deep dives and reviews, and then something happens, and like our schedule's being thrown off all the time.
What schedule? We don't live to a schedule. We just do whatever we would do whatever we want. Uh,
Whatever we want.
and actually, today feels like that's exactly what we're going to be doing because a massive bit of speculation happened yesterday when it was reported that Adrian Newey wants to leave Red Bull Racing. And
Ta-da.
we're not ones to sit and speculate and talk about stuff that isn't going to happen. But this has now been reported by Auto Motor und Sport in Germany.
Nice.
It's been reported by the BBC, and then it's been confirmed by Autosport and the race. That for me is enough for us to at least have a chat about Red Bull losing Adrian Newey. Ammar, what's going on?
So, I have three conflicting thoughts, right? And this is how I put it. It's in this three buckets, right? Adrian Newey, leaving, staying, disappearing, right? Because that's what we're talking about. There are three possibilities. Either he leaves and goes to another team, he stays, which could also be a possibility, or he just disappears because he's had too much. He's been at the pinnacle of this. Like, it doesn't even get better than that. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at, aren't we?
That's it. And I do need to re-emphasize that since this news broke yesterday, there's been no official confirmation from Red Bull
Shocking.
or Adrian Newey that this is actually happening. So everything that we're going to say from here on in is pure dreamery. But
We
here we
make
go.
news here. We make news.
Yeah. But where's the fun if we're not going to do that, right?
We're not going to do that.
Okay, so my first question, why? Why does he want to go?
Yeah, look, we're speculating, right? And this is the most uncomfortable portion of it. I have read and heard that this has a lot to do with what we're calling the Horner Corner or the Christian Horner saga, which it can be one of 15 different things, starting from the inappropriate conversations and all of the allegations and inappropriate actions, I should say, all the way up to what is appearing to be a power struggle at the highest levels of Red Bull. And I don't quite know where that is, but it does, again, speculating. Seems like a lot of Adrian Newey's discontentment sort of rises from there. And I think there's also a little bit of a quote here and there and sort of sprinkled in to just sort of I don't know the mind of Adrian Newey. I'd be curious to know your take because you've done extensive work sort of reading his book and all,
Extensive work.
Scholarly pursuit.
That's true. You should honestly, it's a PhD thesis right now.
But I think at some fundamental level, right? These guys are competing and for seconds and milliseconds and at the highest levels of a sport that is at the pinnacle of motorsports, right? So I imagine there's some ego involved at some level as well too, right? But I think it's a little bit of everything. Don't you think so?
Yeah, man. Look, I'm gonna couch as much as I can of this from Adrian Newey's book, which if you haven't read it, go and read it.
What?
Definitely go
Yeah.
and read it. It's literally the Bible for F1 history, for F1 how to do things, as a little basis for aerodynamics. And if we're going to try and work out what is going on here, because this seems like a very personal kind of decision from Adrian Newey, the only hard evidence or resource that I think we have is that book because it's him giving his thoughts, his personal feelings about things that have gone on throughout his career. So when I thought about that question about why is he leaving, I went back to that book. And look, this is the third time that Adrian Newey potentially has left a major team, right? He left Williams at the end of 1996 and he left McLaren at the end of 2005. And I
Mhm.
think the circumstances around him leaving both of those teams give us an idea of what, not necessarily why he left, but what he wants from a team. And his place within that, which I think can then give us some clues about why he left. But what is it that I think Newey wants? I think he wants harmony. He wants a team that functions optimally. And from the McLaren point of view, that's a process issue. Like, how does the team fit to allow him to do his job properly? But there's also a political aspect to this that's coming in at Red Bull, where there's a fight for power between the Christian Horner faction on one side and the Marco Verstappen faction on the other, and that can only lead to detriment to the competitive potential of Red Bull, even if it isn't showing right now. And I wonder if Newey is sort of looking at that and going, "Look, I don't need this. All I want is to win is to have a structure and a political system where where I can build a car that can win." And the second thing is about credit. Both of the contracts that he was angry about at Williams and McLaren were about money, and both those teams not wanting to pay him money. And I think he felt that not being paid the money was a sign that they didn't think that his contribution was worth it. Now, I don't think Red Bull are not paying him money, but there is something that they have been doing, which is downplaying his involvement in the success that Red Bull have been having over the last 3 seasons, and promoting Pierre Vacher as the guy that's making all the moves at the moment. We can talk about how true that is, but I think it's irked him enough that he's now calling it right. If you don't think my contribution is enough, fine, I'll go.
Yeah, I think this is fairly interesting now, right? Because this particular piece in the Red Bull saga, if he does end up leaving, or at least there's enough in there to suggest that, there's a schism there, right? If you just sort of step back at it and look at the whole picture, I mean, you can see sort of Red Bull crumbling apart, right? Even though they're winning and dominating on track, there couldn't be a more sort of mirror image of what's going on within. This often happens with winning. The great Pat Riley, the legendary coach of the New York Knicks and the Los Angeles Lakers, and then the Miami Heat, always says winning brings in far more trouble than when you're not there winning, right? And I think you're seeing that happen. The power struggle, I think, is pretty interesting. And in my opinion, I think Newey's seen something that the rest of us are not able to see, right? I mean, because if you think about it, the Horner corner, the Horner saga had sort of cooled off for the last month or so, at least in the public eye. There was a lot happening, and then it just seemed to have cooled off. But clearly, there's stuff going on behind the scenes, and you have to wonder if he's seen something there, because there are questions about the fact that he's just signed the extension last year, right? In 23, he still has another year to go, and then there might be another gardening leave. And so for all of those things to happen, and for him to, whatever he's done to sort of publicly indicate for this to happen, would normally wouldn't happen, says to me that he's seeing something that is coming in the future that he doesn't want to be part of. It could be that. My other question was, could it just be the fact that the Red Bull powertrains are not what they're hoping to be, what they're expected to be, what they're anticipating them to be, and then maybe that whole thing isn't going to work and work out quite the way that they hope for it to, right? Because that's a lot of risk there. It's a big unknown, right?
Yeah,
I wonder if that has something to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that comes back to competition again, doesn't it? Like, if the structure isn't there for him to make cars that win, then what's the point in him being there? And he's 65 now, so he may well just be like, well, I don't have it in me to. Well, I'm sure he's never going to say I don't have it in me, but.
And in parallel, there were Verstappen's, not Max, but at least his dad has created enough waves and sort of jumping into this, right? Where we've always sort of questioned why Jos Verstappen is so vocal about this. About the sort of the allegations and the saga with Christian Horner and the other individual at Red Bull, and I don't know. I know there's some speculative bits about who the person was and how they might be tied to Newey, but you kind of have to wonder if that some of it might just be coming down to being competitive in the future or not, right? And that's sort of a way to kind of get these things to happen.
But I do want to push back on the winning team thing, because this is. When other teams have fallen flat on their faces, it tends to be because there's been a regulation change or something external has happened. Yeah. It's not usually because something internal like this has happened in the middle of their pomp, right? This is weird.
It's all weird. I mean, this is something you'd expect from Ferrari, right? We lead the Formula One community in all kinds of irrational stuff, right? And so this is This is surprising, and yet it's not, right? I mean, we know at the end of the day, Red Bull is an energy drink company that is in the business of marketing. And yeah, there you go. And the perfect timing there. Look, we didn't plan it, right? To our viewers, this is not planned. This is, but I think that this is what you're seeing is a multi-dimensional sort of failure of a structure to sort of hold itself together. And oh, by the way, when we did this video on Newey and the McLaren trio, I don't know, about a few months ago, right? We talked about how Red Bull as an organization offered Newey the sort of the perfect set of circumstances, both from a structural standpoint, from an atmosphere standpoint, from a competitive standpoint, everything that you just alluded to. And that seems to be falling apart at multiple levels, right? So Max could be leaving. Christian Horner is having this power struggle. Whatever the sort of the transgression that Christian Horner had or didn't have, I don't want to kind of pin it one way or another because nothing's been proven, but there's something there, right? And then I mean, now we have to start talking about what else is out there too, right, for Newey, and I will get into it. But
the technical structure hasn't changed though, right? Like his way of working and designing a car and how he fits into the technical structure hasn't changed. But my worry here is more that they're saying it's not you that's doing it. It's this entire team.
So I wonder if that because they've had quite a few people leave, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but they keep talking up everybody else in the team, and they're talking more about Adrian Newey heading off to design the RB17 hypercar and less about his input in the Formula One team. It's like they're trying to future-proof, and this is exactly what you are arguing that Toto Wolff is doing.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. Right? It's quite amazing, these stories.
And that part of it is, I wonder if Newey is looking at what they're saying about his contribution, saying, sod that then, I'm going to go and do something else. I'm not saying he has to go to another team to prove himself, because he doesn't need to, but he may just be angry that he's not getting the recognition that he wants. He talks about in his book all the time that the only things that are important in this game are success and credit. That's it.
If you were to pick one guy on the current F1 paddock that no one has, that is universally liked and is not criticized by anyone, it is Adrian Newey. It's quite amazing to see that his own team does not value him in the way that they're saying it. Maybe they are actually valuing it, but these are all quotes in public, right? Going back to the whole Toto Wolff saying certain things in public thing, right? It might just be, it's quite amazing, because if you ask the other 9 teams, and they've already made overtures, right? We know Ferrari's been courting him for years. We've heard stories about how he almost signed there and all of that, right? I mean, we know that Toto is certainly lining up there, which I want to get to, right? Because that's an interesting angle in this, but it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, Aston's willing to give him, I don't know, whatever, blank check, right? And these teams are coming, and here you are, Red Bull sort of setting it up. So I also kind of wonder where, again, I feel like the power struggle dynamics are kind of where this is coming from, where maybe at some level in Red Bull's leadership, they're thinking about, as you said, the future, and maybe they have said and done some things far more overt in private than in public to sort of indicate that we're ready to move on. The proof of which is the RB17 project, right? I mean, that's just sort of the tip of the iceberg. So I think it's a perfect storm. It's amazing.
Can we talk a little bit about Newey's role at Red Bull? Like, is he indispensable, or are Red Bull right? Are they fine, but he can leave. We've got enough here to.
I don't know the answer to this, but don't you think the proof is in the pudding? I mean, the RB20 is so dominant. I mean, he's created 2 cars that, I mean, we've joked about this too, right? They could come back with last year's car and still be dominant over the current field, right? So
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that actually the last 2 cars, the 19 and 20, and this isn't coming directly from Red Bull. This is just what I read from what people put up on social media, but that it's not Newey.
No, Newey I know,
didn't do it. But maybe it's the wider technical team that came up with the 19 and the 20. So fine, whatever. If Newey wasn't involved, just if he goes, what's the problem?
It would be the greatest. What would we think about it, right? if we could know everything, right, in a perfectly imperfect world, right? If we could know everything, what if it wasn't Newey who designed these awesome cars? It was, in fact, the technical department. That would be mind blowing, right? And then there are all these teams lining up to pay him whatever he wants, right? But I'm just joking there. What I'm trying to say is, it could well be that that's how they're couching that, and he could have had those contributions. But what I'm trying to say is that sort of thing has already paid off, right? I mean, they've already won this era. They're going to win this year. They're likely going to be winning next year up until a
But
regulation
this
change. I
isn't.
mean, this is already
But that's just it, though, Ammar. It's not about the next couple of years. We're going into a massive regulation change, and Red Bull have already got one massive thing changing. Like you said, the engine. What they don't want, I think, is another massive personnel change in the middle of that. As you said, no one has a bad word to say about Adrian Newey. For me, he's the closest thing in Formula One to a silver bullet. The proof of the pudding is that when Newey left Williams at the end of 1996, he was sat on his couch in 1997 watching his creation winning the championship. And then immediately in 1998, when he wasn't at the team anymore, McLaren was suddenly championship winning, and Williams had fallen off their perch and were running around in the upper midfield. If aerodynamics are the key to unlocking the performance of your car,
yeah.
you want to have the guy that's preeminent in that field, and not just understanding how aerodynamics works, but how everything around it works. And my contention to all of this is, even if that's right, that the 19 and the 20 were designed by the wider technical team, and Adrian Newey is just moving in and out of that. The RB18, the 2022 cars, where this all started, and it was a concept of knowing that the mechanical platform and getting that right was the only way to get the aerodynamic platform to work. And whose idea was that? Adrian Newey. So everything else that's happened from then until now is built on that. And if I think if Red Bull think that they can walk into the next aerodynamic rule set without Adrian Newey and just blow everybody out of the water because they've got strength in depth, I think they haven't understood what advantage they've had over this past couple of seasons. And I think that for me, aside from the Christian Horner corner stuff, is the key to why Adrian Newey is like, fine, whatever. If you don't need me, I'll go. Because I think they're underestimating, or they're downplaying, because they have to, that part of the contribution.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Unless the Horner corner thing is the worst thing that we could imagine, it does seem like there's a set of contributing factors, right, that have led to this moment, right? I would say that this is a great parallel we're seeing between Mercedes and Red Bull. We're not too far removed from criticizing how Mercedes had developed this sort of winning attitude and winning culture over the years, and which has kind of led to their downfall in some ways for these last couple of years. And I think you could argue that in letting Adrian Newey go, such that might be, they're probably going to do some of the same things too. I think there's also maybe the case of, yes, Adrian Newey has been great, but I can't imagine these Formula One teams thinking, oh, okay, well, Adrian's great, like, let's just not even try, right? So there's got to be a little bit of that ego on some level to say, okay, well, who's going to be the next Adrian, or who's going to be that? And maybe they feel like they have that guy or that team to kind of take them forward. Are they right or wrong? Only time can tell, right? But I think that there's certainly enough there. I mean, look at what Mercedes did a couple of years, right? I mean, where they came up with these zero pods that they think they were gonna ace, and then there are no zero pods, and there's, I don't know, whatever it was, but it's kind of what they're playing out.
But Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, all of them felt that just creating a high downforce aerodynamic package was what was going to get them the wins. And the only team that didn't do that were Red Bull. And the only reason Red Bull didn't do that was because Adrian Newey set that template. And it's what they've been able to build on for 3 seasons now.
I as great as Adrian Newey is, I mean, you have to believe that if you're an Adrian Newey competitor in a different team, right, whoever the equivalent of that,
sure, you're going to believe it. Sure, you're going to believe that.
I mean, I think some even if someone cannot come up with, it does not have his level of insight, expertise, all of the above, feel for everything, right? there's got to be someone who can put together something that is at least competitive. It doesn't
Yeah, so
necessarily have to
okay.
be better.
Yeah, so I think if you take Newey out of the equation, that
Yeah,
levels everything out. So because
correct.
nobody then has that expertise.
Right.
But that then brings Red Bull back down to everybody else's level. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean everybody else catches up.
No, and
It
but I think
brings
the question
them
is
back
what the
down to
delta is, right? Like how much further down. And look, I completely agree with you, but I think that this look, there's a battle of egos happening at Red Bull. I mean, that's just what it is. So it's not hard to imagine. It's not a big leap of faith to say that they think that they can do this without Newey too, whereas
yeah, they
everybody
could
else is lining up, right? I mean, so it's not.
yeah, sure. My contention here is that they might think they can do that. I
Sure.
don't think the evidence is. Look, if somebody else had come up with this entire platform and had been pushing it and designed the rear suspension themselves, which is what Adrian Newey did, he got out on his own drawing board and drew out the rear suspension himself. If somebody else had done all that and had the foresight to know that those two things go together, great. I'd agree with you. But that's not what happened. And the problem is this is a pattern that happens with every single regulation change. It happened in 1998. It happened in 2009. And it's happening again. It happened again in 2022. Whenever there's a massive regulation change, the guy that comes up with the ideas is Adrian Newey, no matter what someone wants to say about the strength and depth they have in their team. And I agree with you that if he's not there and he's not at another team, then yes, that levels the playing field, but it levels the playing field in that Red Bull come back down to everybody else's level. Because
Yeah.
one of the things that we have talked about is nobody else, I think, from a technical point of view, has the breadth of expertise that Newey has. Like he walked around from every department within a racing team. He's worked within each one of those. He was Damon Hill's race engineer in 1996. He was the guy on the pit wall. He was the Bono on the radio. You know, that was him. And
I
and
Go ahead.
he's worked in the chassis department, in the mechanical department, even if his specialty is in aero. You know, so he knows how all of those things integrate. But the way that Formula One teams now recruit, you don't have that expertise anymore. You have different departments that work in their own silos and then report together. But the person at the head of that will have their own special interests themselves. Like at Mercedes, James Allison is an aerodynamicist. At McLaren, Pete Prodromou, aerodynamicist. Rob Marshall essentially is a guy that is a mechanical guy. So all of them have their own specialist area, but none of them have the breadth that means that they are an expert in all of those areas. That's what Adrian Newey has and allows him to do that.
No, we don't see that anywhere else, and I think that's what makes this all so fascinating, right? I mean, there's also the sort of the generational thing, right? Like when you sort of start to move, and Adrian Newey has been around the sport for a while.
Where will he go next? I think there's probably three main places that he could go.
Money bags, all money bags.
Well, yeah, I think they are. So I've got Ferrari, I've got Aston Martin, and I've got retirement with potentially, like you said, a role in F1 or the FIA. Let's do those in turn. So Ferrari, again, going back to his book, this is the third main time in Formula One, at least, that he's been courted by Ferrari. First time was in 1995, when Jean Todt was building a team up to take on the world, and they just hired Michael Schumacher. And Adrian Newey was approached, but he said, "No, it's too far to go to Italy. My life is here." Then the second was in 2014, when at that time Newey was having some reservations about the Renault power unit, and he kind of felt like disillusioned again, and like I don't want to be here. So Ferrari approached him, and from what I understand and what he says in his book, he seriously considered that offer, but eventually turned it down because of the structure and the spirit that they had at Red Bull at the time, which I come back to. I don't think they have right now,
They don't
all
have
of the
that.
reasons that we've just said. And then finally, he's said explicitly that some of the regrets that he has are not working at Ferrari, not working with Lewis Hamilton, and that means that this has become a perfect confluence of events where there's there's a dynamic at Red Bull that means that he might not want to be there anymore. Ferrari are giving him a big money offer, and they have a structure there now with Fred Vasseur that may be a better option than what he has at Red Bull right now. And Lewis Hamilton's just gone there. What do you think?
I think the Lewis Hamilton angle is a little bit hard to think through, right? Because if in fact Newey cannot start at Ferrari in 27, Lewis is what signed up for 2 years initially, and then maybe we'll see what 27 looks like. And oh, good God, that's a long time, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't know about the Lewis Hamilton. I don't disagree that he would want to work with Lewis, and that might be there. And I think the idea of getting Lewis an eighth might also be an added bonus and incentive. And then, oh, by the way, he's then at that point sticking it to Red Bull too, right? So I don't know how feasible that is. And there's a good chance Lewis could win that earlier too. I mean, if Ferrari are going to be any good, they're going to have to try to be good these next couple of years too. They just can't wait for him to come in and design something right away. And even
I don't think that's I don't think that's what they would be doing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think could he take Ferrari in the future? Yeah, but at that point again, I don't know. I don't know what the timeline looks like. I mean, this sort of goes back to that, right? It's a timeline thing. I think the idea of working at Ferrari at 100%, no doubt. But I don't know. I mean, again, I think this is the thing, right? I mean, in this evolution of ground effect cars, let's say he steps away for 2 years because that's what it's looking like, right? Where is the evolution? Maybe, right. So assuming he does that, right? What is the evolution of the ground effect work in those 2 years? Is it enough time for a group of others to catch up or not? I think that's the question.
Yeah. So even if Adrian Newey, as is considered, starts working at another team in 2027, which means that he would only really have influence on the car as it comes out in 2028. Gardening leave for Newey isn't really a thing. He's already seen the crux of the rules that are coming out, even if they haven't been finalized on the chassis side. And, again, going back to his book, he was off in 1997, but he had the rules. He was given them by somebody at McLaren for 1998. And he says that he sat in his basement in Fifield with his 0.7 millimeter HB pencil, and he was making sketches. So he turned up at McLaren in 1998 with all of the sketches and design plans, and he says that he went in there and he had to say, "Look, guys, yeah, I get that you've been doing this thing, but let's do this other thing because this is what I've been sketching." And that was a masterstroke because McLaren went off and won 2 championships in 1998 and were the dominant force over the next 2 or 3 seasons until Ferrari got their act together. Ultimately, I think that's the problem, right? But even if he has that break and comes back to Ferrari in 2027 to then work on the 2028 car. Look, I take your point, and this is something that I've seen bandied about as well, that, if he's not able to start until that late, then what's the advantage? But actually, the advantage is that he's not at Red Bull.
Yeah, fair enough. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's still enough of an advantage there for.
I don't disagree, but I think I was just responding to the Lewis Hamilton angle of it, right?
Oh, the Hamilton thing is yeah. That's neither here nor there ultimately. But Newey does have a bit of romanticism to him, and he does want to work with those drivers. I think he has missed out in his career really on working with the biggest drivers in the sport. He's only really managed to do it now with Verstappen.
Should have signed in 23.
But he's never worked with Schumacher. He worked with Senna for 3 races, and that's still the biggest tragedy I think ever. He hasn't worked with Lewis. He hasn't worked with Fernando, and this would be an opportunity to potentially correct that, even if it's at the end of both their careers, because Lewis would be, 41 at that point, and Newey would be 67, 68 at that point. He'd definitely be up for retirement. Next team, Aston Martin. And Aston have been building up. Lawrence Stroll has brought in a new technical team. He's brought in Fernando. He's brought in a new wind tunnel, a new simulator. And there's a whole heap of stuff that would draw Adrian Newey towards Aston Martin. And the other driver that he's said that he regrets never working with is Fernando Alonso. So there he is. Why would he not go to Aston? There's a huge amount of money being thrown his way to bring him there.
I have this feeling that money is not the factor, right? For him at this stage. I mean, he just comes off. I have no idea though, but I'm sure he just comes off as a guy who doesn't really care about all the other stuff, and just wants to focus on racing and designing and all everything that's related to track stuff. I think again the Alonso stuff is kind of like with the Lewis stuff, right? If he's going to have to wait until 27 to be able to do that, is Alonso going to hang around? Maybe, I guess you can't put anything past Alonso, but realistically, it seems like these are his last couple of years. And then I don't know about I mean, even sort of going back to Aston, right? Everything right now seems great, but there are rumors about Lawrence Stroll wanting to sell the team. I've read somewhere saying he might even be offering up to a 25% stake in the team, and what that means has
Yeah.
different implications. So I don't know. Is that something you really want to go to if you're Newey? Like, what's the appeal of that really?
Well, I mean, it would be a chance if this is what he wanted to do, I guess, to get a team from A to B, which is what he did at McLaren. It's what he did at Red Bull. You know, they were nothing, and then they were everything. That would be something to do at Aston, especially if the resources are there as they seem to be to allow that to actually happen. Unlike the Ferrari move, it wouldn't mean a massive move to another country and uprooting his entire life. He could just move up the road to Silverstone. It would be straightforward. So there are some things that I think would be more appealing for him than simply going to Maranello. But there are, as you say, a few things that maybe aren't. Just thinking back to his McLaren stint and why he left there, one of the reasons was because they created this matrix system of different department heads talking to each other and then deciding on things by committee. And there was a feeling at that point that it was about trying to limit the power that one person has within that organization. That's what Ron Dennis wanted. And who was it that set up that entire organization, that structure? It's a chap called Martin Whitmarsh.
Yep.
Who's the group CEO at Aston Martin right now? Martin Whitmarsh.
You guessed it.
Yeah. So I don't know, does he want to reunite with that? Does he want to create like an entire like another, having to bury the hatchet and work nicely with a guy that essentially screwed him over the last time he was in a position where he could make a difference? I'm not sure he really wants to do that. Although I think that's probably a minor thing within the decision making process, because at this point, you kind of give Adrian Newey what he wants because he's got that kind of power within Formula One now, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that's the major reason, but it's something to think about. But yeah, Aston definitely has some pulling power. The resources and the personnel that are there right now. Let's talk about the final piece of this puzzle. Would he just want to retire? That's what you've alluded to already, and I have to say I agree. And if he retires and takes up the opportunity to sail around the world on his brand new boat, as he's intimated in the past, great. I'm sure he would love to do that. But more enticingly, as you said, would be a role at the FIA. They've had a couple of stabs now at trying to get this formula right and allow the cars to follow. He has been instrumental in scuppering that for the last 3 seasons. So maybe having him at the FIA means that there's a better chance that, one, those rules work, and two, that the competitive order isn't scuppered by him being at a team, allowing that team to just run roughshod over whatever the FIA have wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with this, and I would put, if I were a betting man, I would put all my money on this, right? Because it also, as a Formula One fan, right, the idea of Red Bull slipping down a little bit, it would be so enticing. Like, I mean, look at the competitiveness we have for P2 every race weekend now. What would that look like if it were for race wins? You could have 4 or 5 teams legitimately competing to win a race. There's that. And then, of course, as you mentioned, there couldn't be a better person to tackle what the FIA has struggled to do with these new set of formulas, right? And that would be a great thing for them, right? Because they've been wanting to have more following, more overtaking, less of all the stuff that sort of shreds tires for those that are following, and overheating problems and all of the above, right? And that's a great person to do it. And I think for Newey too, I think what a great challenge that would be, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that would be
completely different, completely
yeah,
new, right?
and he would be leading that in any way. I mean, there wouldn't be a transitional plan to sort of put together to kind of do any of the
Yeah,
stuff
because
that he would at any of the other
yeah,
teams.
I agree, and it furthers my notion that the FIA has now become the Inter Miami of Formula One. If you want to retire on a high, go to the FIA.
That's a great plug for the Miami Grand Prix coming up too. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if anyone's gonna make the formula work, and tell the FIA where they're going wrong in their technical regulations, it's gonna be Adrian Newey. I
So
would love to see it.
I've done a lot of hot takery this week, so I'd like to kind of get another hot take out there.
Hit
In
me.
the event that I've gotten everything I said prior to wrong, and I'm just gonna say this. This is completely reckless speculation. What if Toto Wolff was in saying the stuff that he has been saying in the media and flirting with Max was actually trying to like unsettle Red Bull to a point where Adrian Newey has decided to leave. And maybe that was his goal all along, that this idea of Max leaving might have been the I don't know if it really was or not, but might have been one of those major pieces in Newey to going to Red Bull and saying, you know what, I'm done with it, among other things. Like, because I mean, look what he has with Max. I mean, that's a pretty unique thing. He doesn't quite have that with Checo, right? So the
I mean, I think that the premise of what you're saying is right, if not the specifics, in that I think every team on the grid will do whatever they can to destabilize Red
yeah,
Bull. And Red Bull have
exactly.
given them an opening to allow that to happen
Yeah.
with the Horner Corner stuff. Toto has gone after one piece of that pie, which is Verstappen, and tried to destabilize the team that way. And
Ferraris.
Ferrari and Aston Martin specifically have gone after Adrian Newey and tried to destabilize the team that way. But all of this is other Formula One teams trying to pick the bones of a team that are trying to implode on themselves and try to hasten that implosion. It's not necessarily about the individuals and trying to take them. It's just about trying to bring the empire down, isn't it? Oof, I think we've gone on for a while about Adrian Newey and leaving Red Bull. And
It's
this
a
is
lot of
as
gas
as
bagging
we
for all speculation, right?
indeed, as I said, as we said at the beginning, this is purely speculative. We could turn up on Monday morning and Adrian Newey has signed an extension to his
Extension.
extension.
It's good to
Who
get
knows?
random.
Until any of that happens, all of this is speculation. But as always, this has been fun. Thanks, Ammar.
Yeah,
For everyone out there, please like, please subscribe, leave us some comments. We read all of them.
we
We
do.
even reply to some of them. But until the next one, we'll see you then.
Later.